We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated, secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
What if I told you our success is a direct correlation of our deep and meaningful relationships? Today, we're joined by a certified dating and breakup coach to explore how building lasting connections can propel us to the next level. And a big part of that is also embracing our own unique and authentic self. Today we have with us Lydia Klemensowicz, who is a dating and breakup coach, a Reiki master, and client success manager for Selena Soo. She also has extensive experience in helping people build those healthy relationships. And Lydia, I have to tell you, like when we first connected, I was so drawn in by first of all, you and like your energy and everything you put out, but also just like what you do and how interesting that is. So, before we jump into some of the content, I would love to also hear from you on, like how you got into that. Like, how do you become a breakup and dating coach? And then, what does that look like for you?
Oh my gosh, I'm blushing over here, Lindsay. Thank you so much. I'm excited to really reveal some juicy and important insights for your listeners today. It's going to be an
Wow.
amazing episode, and I'm so excited. And how I became a dating and breakup coach really, I think I've kind of prepared most of my life for this. I've always been fascinated by relationships and just the way that we connect with each other. I think I remember
Wow.
even being a teenager, and my parents were the kind of parents that really always brought me and my sisters around their adult friends. So I would hear conversation that their friends were having with each other about relationships, and I always wanted to join the conversation. And I think from an early age, I was really exposed to how to connect with people and how to create and maintain conversations, which I realize now as an adult is a skill that I have been developing since childhood. And becoming a dating and breakup coach really started when I went through a really painful breakup. Actually, I'm talking to
Mhm.
you on around the 2-year anniversary of when I walked away from my partner. And
Mm.
it was a really painful and overall toxic relationship, I will say. But I say that taking accountability for the ways that I abandoned myself in that relationship and
Yeah.
the things that I put up with because I had these, wounded parts of me that I wasn't fully recognizing or acknowledging. And so that relationship was somebody I thought I was going to marry and I had deep love for. But it was very unhealthy in the way that he was very avoidant, and that kind of triggered a lot of anxieties for me and
Wow.
was a portal to realizing what I needed to heal for myself. But I knew and felt like I was supposed to walk away probably earlier than I did, which I think probably a lot of people can relate to if they've been in,
Yeah.
tough relationships. There's something nagging at your intuition. There's something that you feel in the pit of your stomach, like this isn't right. But there's also a fear to walking away because this has felt so familiar and so comfortable. And that's relationships. Like once you build that rapport and you invest time, it's like there's a psychological phenomenon called the sunk cost fallacy, where the more we invest in something, the harder it is to walk away from that. And so It was a difficult decision, and I remember the exact moment I broke up with him and walked away. It was like my my inner girl, my inner child, and my future Lydia met each other in that moment. Like I could see
Mhm.
both of them in front of me. And I just got a confirmation from him in this one moment when we were sitting by the water in Vancouver and we were having another conversation about the trajectory of our relationship and kind of what we were feeling. And he, for the first time, admitted that he couldn't prioritize me or the relationship.
Ooh,
And I already saw that in his actions, but it was like hearing
yeah,
him say that,
yeah,
it felt like a light bulb moment. Like, the cartoons when just like a light bulb goes off beside their head. I felt like I saw
yeah,
and
yeah,
felt that. And I knew in that
yeah.
moment I could not continue to stay. It was like
Mm,
that, the the sadness of staying at that moment, knowing that information so clearly became greater than the fear of walking away and what the
yeah.
discomfort I would face on the other side. So I just said, okay, take care. And I remember
Mm.
looking him in the eyes one final time, like I'm teary eyed, he's teary eyed. And I walked away and I just burst into tears. I called a girlfriend. I was like, I need to come over and talk to you
Yeah,
about what just happened. And that propelled me on a deep healing journey where
yeah,
it happened in kind of synchronistic timing too, because I was finishing up a coaching program online where I was getting certified as a coach. So I was learning about all of these tools. I was reading up a lot about anxious and like attachment styles and relationships. And I
yeah.
thought, wow, I really need to dedicate myself to healing from this. And I was committed. I was just like, I see a better and brighter future for me, one where I don't abandon myself, lose my sparkly self, one where I don't fall into this pattern ever again. And so I invested in relationship coaching. I went to therapy. I went more all in dancing, and I just like surrounded myself with
Mm.
people that I love and like self-soothed as much as possible. And I realized a few months later I actually went to a place of forgiveness with him for all the ways
Ooh,
that I felt like I was treated, and I forgave myself too for staying in there longer than I probably should have. And I realized, wow, this is important work that a lot of people are that universally going through. And so it dropped in on me one night. I would love to help people heal from heartbreak and rebuild their self-worth so that they can see this as the portal for their next best chapter. And so at that moment, I took my first practice client through my first signature breakup blueprint program, which I still run to this day. I actually just finished with another client yesterday, no, 2 days ago. And it's just a miracle to witness the evolution of especially a woman who has struggled being a people pleaser, who has let herself go in relationship for the sake of like putting another person on a pedestal or like imagining what's possible even when they're just getting breadcrumbs. And yeah,
yeah,
she was like, you've taught me, actually I thought I was full of self-love, but you've taught me, no, this is the real self-love through working with you in this program. So that's kind of the origin story of it. And it has naturally evolved into also dating coaching, where yes, I help people through the heartbreak phase, but then I help prepare them to not let that jade them as they enter
yeah.
the dating world again, so that
Mm,
they can come
yeah,
back into dating with like a sense of magnetism and confidence and radical clarity. So that's kind of how I got into this work.
yeah. That's amazing. Well, and I think like, going back to the piece about like why that's hard to walk away, I think there's also a piece of like, there's the sunk cost, but there's also that fear of like stepping away from what's familiar, right? Like the brain likes what's familiar, even if it like is actually more painful. And so I think, that's a huge piece of it. And then when you talk about, getting into new relationships, I think that's a huge call out what you said about not, not being stuck in this is how it's always going to be. And I personally struggled with this like deeply. Like I could have used you a few years ago when I started dating again. Because after my divorce, I spent a year and a half like dating myself and getting to know me
Yeah.
again for like the first time of like, what do I even like? What do I like to do? Right. Like it was like kind of like living for me for the first time. But then, fast forward a year and a half later, like I started dating again
and it's like almost like the fingers of the past were like all over right, that
Mm.
new present relationship, because I didn't have those tools at the time, right? Like, so that's a huge call out that you do that. So then what are what are you doing now? Are you dating, like, as a dating coach? I don't know if that's something that you're just like in it right now yourself, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm in it, baby. But in it in a way where I talk a lot about dating. I run conscious dating workshops as well in
Oh,
Vancouver,
cool.
and
Yeah.
like work with clients one-to-one, run workshops. And what I often try to tell people is I think there's also a hesitancy for people to add. I mean, we're all so busy now, right? Like we're all
Yeah.
very overwhelmed with life. And as much
Yeah.
as I'm a fan of, yeah, nourishing yourself, your friendships, your family, your business or your career, your hobbies, I think there's a tendency to get nervous about dating and investing the time and energy into that because it's very risky, right? Because like going on
Yeah.
dates with people might not lead to your future husband or wife or partner. And
Yeah.
so you're investing a lot of time and energy into something that's unknown, but
Hmm.
but you have to kind of like reframe your mindset around it to seeing like the process of dating is required. It's required to potentially meet somebody. And even if like you
Yeah.
don't meet somebody like through the actual art of dating and you just spontaneously run into somebody at an event and it just becomes seamless and natural, the dating that you might have done at a period before that has prepared you for this, right? I see dating as
Yeah.
like actually a really integral way to learn about ourselves. I see it as a spiritual and personal development journey. And so for me, I'm in dating right now and it's a piece of the pie of my life, right? So I have all these pieces of pies that I'm just like, they're all
Yeah.
delectable and tasty, and then they all lead
Yeah.
into this beautiful pie, and dating is a piece. So it's not like um I'm in a hustle around dating necessarily, but I do incorporate it into my already rich life so that it doesn't feel like I'm dating from lack or scarcity, but it's from a place
Mhm.
of abundance and joy and excitement. And that's what I'm really passionate about actually in my work, is helping people get excited about dating again.
Yeah.
I actually had another client, she finished in my 3-month romance reset program. So that's my signature program to really help you reset the button on dating. And she hadn't been on a
Yeah.
date in years because she felt like she was still holding on some heartbreaks, a lot of insecurities and limiting beliefs about herself and her worth. And
Mhm.
within our work together, she was going on dates again and she was having a good time. And she said, I'm attracting just different caliber of people and I'm actually having fun because
Yeah.
I know who I am. And so that's, I think, that's how I'm dating at this moment, is from a place of like, I know who I am. I know what I'm
Mm.
looking for. I know what I'm bringing to the table. But in the meantime, I'm going to date and it's not going to work out with everybody. And maybe it'll work out with somebody. And that's the journey, is like, you have to kind of let go of some attachments and be super rooted in you and what you're ready to call in.
Yeah. I love this idea of like taking the pressure off, right? Like,
Yeah.
not making it the whole picture, but like one slice of pie. And by the way, like, I love analogies. So you're speaking my language, especially food. So we can talk about food all
Yes.
day.
Amen.
And so like one slice of that pie, it's just one piece. It's not,
Yeah.
the whole picture, right? It's not your full support. You're not, needing it and desperate for it, right? Because that's when we kind of, maybe end up settling for something that's not so great. And then, going back to what we are saying earlier, then you're like, you were with this person because you were desperate, and now you're with them and they're familiar and you don't want to walk away and you're not happy. And so I love that idea of taking the pressure off. That's so important.
Yeah, and I'm curious about your journey too. Like you said, you were dating yourself for a year and a half. So what was it like when you decided to enter back into the dating world?
Yeah, it was honestly like really exciting. And also, I think because I had been with myself for so long, like a lot of times people will jump out of a relationship and like right into dating, and I didn't do that on purpose, because it now, like, I kind of did it initially, and then I was like, this isn't gonna work. Like, I did it for like a month or something, and then I was like, no, 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 I don't want to do this. So then I was like with truly with myself for quite a while, and then I was actually sitting on a girlfriend's couch and we were watching Gilmore Girls with our skinny popcorn, and our decaf coffee that we, our ritual. And on the show, the mom went on a date. I think it was with Luke at the time.
Mm.
And if anyone's watched the show,
Oh,
and
I'm a Gilmore Girls fanatic. I know the exact episode you're talking about.
yeah. So, and I was watching that scene and they're sitting down at the cafe at that table. And I just thought, gosh, it would be nice to go on a date again. Like, and I knew in that moment that I was ready. And so, my friend, she recommended like a different app I hadn't tried before that was a little bit more serious. And so I tried that out. And actually I went on 2 dates. The first one uh was a disaster. And the second
Oh
one
no.
just so happened. I mean, I think I just got lucky. Like I wouldn't tell everybody to just expect this, but on my second
Yeah.
date, it just so happened that like the chemistry was there and the connection was there. And we basically went all in on each other because it just felt right for both of us. But then the challenges were in like, okay, we had fun for a few months. And then as, my feelings got deeper and more serious, then it was like all those old things and old fears and old trauma were coming up. And the fears were there of like, is the past going to repeat itself? And there's kind of that
Mm.
fear of like, when is the shoe going to drop? When is the rug going to be pulled out from under me again? Right. Those old fears come up. So that's kind of more what I had to work through versus like the process of dating because there wasn't a whole lot of it.
Mhm. I love that you said that so much. Well, there's like a couple pieces, especially that stood out to me when you said like that going all in. That reminds me of what Luke said to Lorelai on that date when he's
Yeah.
like, "I am all in, Lorelai." So nice call
Yeah.
out there. But I think what you said is really beautiful in that I think people, especially romanticizer women who have been hurt before, and I speak from experience,
Yeah.
go into
Yeah.
entering seriously with somebody and thinking, oh, once
Yeah.
like I find my prince charming, or like these are
Yeah.
the words we tell ourselves, once I find that person, it'll
Yeah.
all be okay. But the fact is, even
Yeah.
healthy people and relationships can help us confront those wounds and those
Yeah.
triggers, right?
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
sometimes is, especially if you've been used to um people who haven't treated you well, it's like, whoa, like this is new as well, right? Like speaking back to like
Yeah.
that um unfamiliar pain or familiar pain, familiar guys who were avoidant or like not communicating, that's like becomes your norm. And then you have like a guy who actually wants to commit to you, and you start to have these other, things come up. So I just liked that you said you were still on like another journey of opening up to what you were learning about yourself through that process, and like and not running away from it either.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge because if like, I mean, for my ex-wife, that, 7, 8 years together between like dating and marriage, I mean, it was chaotic, and that there was manipulation and all kinds of, toxic things happening that I didn't know what it was like to not live that way. So then when someone came into my life, my now current boyfriend, he it was healthy and it was stable and he didn't manipulate and he like there wasn't codependency and it was like we didn't need each other. We just wanted each other and we chose each other. And while that was like exciting and thrilling, it was also like, okay, like where's Oz behind the curtain, right? Like when is this gonna like,
Where's
reveal itself to
us?
be something else?
I love that analogy. That's so funny. Yeah, you're like, when's the other shoe gonna drop kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But that's also
Yeah.
something to heal. That's a bit of an old story that a lot of people hold.
Yeah.
Oh, it's almost too good to be true. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what's underneath that for you, right? And are you communicating
Yeah.
that to the person that you're seeing? If you're just holding it all in, then they might not even fully understand what's in your world, and you have to learn to also communicate how you're feeling along the way, even though it's vulnerable. It's important.
Yeah, and that can be scary, right? Like to be
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm telling myself these crazy stories, and well, and they're really not crazy, right? Like, because of course our minds make up those stories because that's what we've experienced. But then it's how do we logically and intentionally reframe that to learn something new and learn those new pathways, right? And
Mm.
for me, I was very lucky in the sense that I found a partner who like was willing to go, you know, watch videos on trauma and learn, what I was experiencing and what was happening in my brain. And we bought books and like learned together and had those really tough conversations where we were both willing to figure it out together. Like, this is hard. These are like, we all have our triggers, right? And like, I have mine. And in the beginning, they were so hard to control and so hard to even know what was happening. And so, like, I mean, I didn't even admit that I have trauma until like 3 years ago, or yeah, like 2 or 3 years ago, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
you deal with the repercussions, but until you admit it, you can't really move forward, right? And so that
Mhm.
helped us grow so much more too, because, and I think it's just really important to know that whatever partner you're choosing, and we talk about intentionally choosing the relationships in our life, any kind of relationship, friends, work, whatever, like whoever you want to be around in your life, are they willing to grow with you and are they willing to figure it out with you? I think is so important.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, Lindsay. I felt just a deep body resonance with that because what I've also learned in my own journey, and I try to teach this as well, is we get very hung up on the way we meet somebody and what
Yeah.
happens in the beginning and the things we
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
But that's such a small part of your story with somebody.
Yeah.
And I I just recommend to people to really look for that person, as you so beautifully said, that you can build with. Like those are the
Yeah.
qualities of a long-term, happy, healthy relationship, is like somebody who is ready to commit to that and take action in that direction, like flowing towards the future together and building something together versus just, yeah, the chemistry in the beginning is fun and nice, but that's not all you should be looking for.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's so important, and like we've even had, being together a little over 3 years now, like we've even had those conversations as we go through our own growth and journeys of like, do we still want to be together, right? And the answer has always come back as a resounding yes, but I think the ability to like intentionally choose that, not just because, oh, we're just together, so we should just stay together, but like, is this truly what we want? And having those check-ins too, I think is important.
I love that. That's really healthy that you guys check in on that and are like, is this what we truly want? And then, yeah, no, we're both going to continue to deciding. It is a decision. And like,
Yeah.
it's not something that you're always going to feel. Sometimes life brings
Yeah.
hurdles and things are hard,
Yeah.
and you have to then in that moment decide. I've seen that with my parents too. Like they've been married for 32 years, and something that's always
Mm,
stuck with me is my dad saying that love is action. It's deciding
mm,
every day. It's not just a feeling. Like love is a feeling, but in terms of
yeah.
building lasting relationships, it's a verb.
Yeah.
It's an
Oh,
action.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I know it's so many people like I've already been married and divorced and he's never been married, but like both of us like really have no desire to like get married, like through the government. And it's funny because people are always like, you should, don't you want to get married? And I'm like, but I get to like we get to choose each other every single day. You know what I mean? We're not like, we got
Yeah.
married, so I have to stay together. Like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when we zoom out and look at like all relationships in our life,
Mm.
like I mentioned a little bit ago, like, dating or friendships or our network of colleagues or who we work with and, who's our family, blood or chosen, right? Like, uh, why are relationships in general in our life so important for our future success, like of our life and like whatever success looks like for us, personally,
Yeah.
professionally, why are relationships such an important part of that?
Mm. Yeah, so I think relationships are truly the foundation of
Yeah.
opportunity, of
Yeah.
trust, of joy,
Yes.
of meaning and fulfillment. And there are like they are our pathways to, yeah, success in so many ways. And when you choose, it's not just any relationship, the right relationships are a pathway to success and fulfillment, because you can make
Yeah.
relationships with people that sure
Yeah.
lead you to successes, but if there's energy behind that relationship that is manipulative or untrustworthy, or it's just like you're just trying to get something from the other person all the time, then is that truly success? So I liked that you said also it's what success looks like for you, and really getting in touch, I think, with what your values are in the process
Yeah.
of building relationships towards success. And it's, yeah, success is not just like getting that next gig. It's like the way you feel about yourself through that process. And so, but I mean, for me, for sure, it's relationships have been the foundation of most of my job opportunities, most of
Yeah.
the I've traveled a lot. So you're talking to me in Buenos Aires, Argentina at the moment. I've been traveling this summer, and this is the 32nd country I've traveled to alone. Uh, and throughout all my travels, relationships have been at the forefront. Like, I am so infinitely blessed for the people I've met along the way who have opened up their hearts and homes and have loved me. And that's just enriching my life so much. So in that way, that's successful for me too. And that's not connected to my career or anything. It's just
Yeah.
like me putting myself out there and opening up my heart to people. But most of, and if we're talking about career and business as well, yeah, most of my prosperity and abundance has come from building meaningful networks and community and relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I love what you said in the beginning of that is the right relationships. And
Yeah.
there's not like it's not in like a black and white sense of like right and wrong, but like what is
Yeah.
right for you, right? Like what are those relationships that truly serve you in your own definition of success?
Hmm. Absolutely. It's so important to be living in integrity with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely learned, for me, what feels like a good, nourishing relationship. I mean, in a past life, in my early career, I worked in politics, and I saw firsthand actually the illustration of not so healthy relationships in
Yeah.
using people to
Hmm.
get certain opportunities in that world. But there are a lot of great people in that world too. And like a lot of politics, a lot of most careers is just networking based. And I
Yeah.
actually got my first job in an Ontario. So I'm from Canada, and I went to university in Ontario, and I got my first job in a community political office because I had volunteered and built a relationship with this politician and his office through the course of my
Yeah.
undergraduate program. And so, and I wasn't trying to get a job through them necessarily. I just liked the community. I really liked what he stood for, and I liked him as a person,
Mm.
and his values
Yeah.
really resonated with mine. And he always really
Yeah.
valued the people who volunteered for him, and I felt that energy. And so
Mhm.
when I graduated, they reached, or they knew I was graduating. Like, I didn't even reach out to them. They reached out to me and they said, "Oh, so and so told us you're about to graduate this spring. We have an opening in our office. We would love to interview for it." And because he already knew me and knew that I showed up for him and I cared, like, I don't even think I had the full background for that job. I don't even know if I was like, I had major imposter syndrome. Like, it was a
Yeah.
big responsibility of a job, but because they trusted me,
Yeah.
and I mean, they saw I was competent. It's not, I'm not trying to like
Yeah.
downgrade
Yeah.
myself
Yeah.
necessarily, but fresh out of undergrad for a job that I had was a big deal. I was doing
Yeah.
correspondence, and I was doing casework in the office where I was serving people in their day-to-day challenges as it confronted the political realm of provincial politics in Canada. And so I was advocating for real people and real issues. I went from my university bubble to the real world really quickly,
Yeah.
but they trusted me and I trusted them. And I felt like that position, I was only in it for a little over a year. Ultimately, it didn't fully feel aligned with me on a soul level, but I met a
Yeah.
lot of good people through that opportunity, and but also learned about, other potentially shady things behind the scenes of the
Yeah.
political networking realm. So just to illustrate back to the point of really checking in with you and what feels an integrity for you when you're meeting people and building those relationships.
Yeah, and something else you said that I want to point out too is like when you went into that situation and you were building those relationships, there's kind of these two layers. So
Mm.
you went in just truly like connecting and not trying to get anything out of it, right? Like you said, I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to get anything out of it. I wasn't looking for the job, but then the job came from it. So it's like we don't want to go in and make these connections like just for,
Yeah.
like use people as a means to an end. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like there's so much like juiciness in those relationships themselves and just like getting to know other human beings and connecting with, other perspectives and learning from each other. And then there's also opportunity that can come from that because you've built that trust. Like you said, maybe you weren't qualified for the job yet, but you were competent, you were able to figure it out, you were able to learn it, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not that you weren't able to do the job. Trust me, I've been put in jobs I wasn't technically on paper qualified for that I crushed because I was able
Right.
to figure it out, right? So I
Yeah.
truly trust that you're also a lifelong learner and you were able to figure
Yes.
that out. And so but that's where those opportunities can come from, where you can step into a room you don't maybe feel yet qualified for because you haven't done the reps in
Mm.
that particular thing, but you can figure it out and learn it.
Yeah, you can figure it out and learn it. And because you have the trust, again, that's the foundation. So it's just a
Yeah.
lot easier to learn and be adaptable to those situations versus if I was
Yeah.
like applying for that job super wide-eyed and fresh. Like I might have been
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
even more out of my head if I didn't already know the people in that office and
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was such a confidence builder and it was such an example of the importance of putting yourself out there in opportunities. I did a lot of that in university, just even outside of politics. I volunteered for a lot of different organizations and groups and got other opportunities. I volunteered a lot with Oxfam Canada, and Oxfam is an NGO. And through, my involvement with the club on my university campus and the national office in Ottawa, they also knew I was really passionate about their causes. And they invited me actually to represent Canada at like a youth advocacy tour. So like I was the Canadian representative to speak to other politicians with other representatives, other youth from around the world. And I did that at 22 years old. And then they invited me out of like all these other youth in Canada because I had shown up for them for the years
Yeah.
prior because I was just passionate about what they stood for. And then I had this
Yeah.
amazing opportunity. And again, people think about you, right? You plant
Yeah.
seeds. I think that's the beauty of
Yeah.
it is like, yeah, you're not necessarily sure what opportunities this relationship might
Yeah.
lead to, but you can trust that like it'll plant seeds and there will be win-win opportunity for it for both of you at some
Yeah.
point. I think like you can trust in that if it feels like it's the right relationship, there will be something mutual beneficial out of it, whether it's for a career opportunity or it's just like you two really enjoy each other and you just want to, stay connected because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like learn from each other, right?
Yeah, learn from each other. Exactly. Yeah.
So, and like you talked about these decisions that we don't make, right? Like there's like
Mm,
we show up, we network, we build these connections, we just kind of live into it, not necessarily like having a very set expectation. So they make the decisions on what's offered to us, but there's also decisions that we have to make. And so I'm
mhm.
also curious how these relationships and the networking that we're doing influences the decisions that we then make. Like how do we make those decisions on what we want to do?
Yeah, I think it's such a good question. And I think it's all about checking in with your vision for your life.
Yeah.
And you don't have to know how things will be for a long time, but if you can even just look ahead for the next, like I'd say even 3 years, and think about where you want
Mhm.
to be in the next 3 years in life,
Yeah.
where you want to be with romantic relationships, where you want to be in your career or your business. And then you almost like reverse engineer and you then look at who you are, your own qualities. What do you enjoy? Right? So
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah.
Like what lights you up that's connected to your vision. So for example, for me, my vision, I have my business as a dating and breakup coach, and then I work as a client success manager and partnerships manager for Selena Soo. And I think there's been many decisions that I've made along the way that have led to the opportunities I've had in both of these realms. And that started with knowing myself. So, for example, I know that I really shine when I'm in the room in person and I'm connecting with people
Mhm.
one on one. So I love
Yeah.
doing groups and like community facilitation and everything, but I think my superpowers really come out, especially in one to one. So, what do I kind
Yeah.
of think about there? Okay, I make it a goal to go to at minimum one in-person event a month. Um,
Okay.
because I know that that's in I'm a busy person. So if I set an audacious goal of like a lot more,
Yeah.
then I might feel disappointed at the end of the month when I don't meet that goal. So I say minimum of
Yeah.
one, anything else is a bonus. The goal to go into that
Nice.
one is just to meet people, just to meet
Yeah.
people and stay connected to people who I feel a resonance with. Then from there, I follow up with people who I feel a resonance with to connect one to one,
Yeah.
whether it's virtual or like meet in person for a coffee. And I just see where the relationship takes us. Like I approach it with curiosity. I think whenever I approach things from curiosity, that's one of my values, then I know I'll enjoy the process. So really that decision along the way is a process. So it's not fully looking at like the peak of the mountain through every interaction.
Yeah.
Although I know
Yeah.
what my vision is, that's
Yeah.
in my heart and in my soul, the
Yep.
process itself brings me joy. Right? Because back
Yeah.
to like knowing
Totally.
myself, it's the one-to-one connection that like lifts me up and energizes me. And so really it's about identifying what matters to you, knowing who you are in terms of your time, your energy, your skill set, and then bringing that to the table to find those win-win connections. And then when I feel like the timing is right through a number of touch points, I'll either
Mhm.
offer to add value to somebody, like that could be me being on their podcast, me, joining in their community, um, or it might be inviting that person to add value in some way to my life. And in that moment,
Yeah.
you just energetically feel like it's right because you've built
Yeah.
that sustainable foundation. So it's just a lot of it is honestly trusting your intuition. It really comes down
Yeah.
to, at least that's what my experience has been, is just trusting my intuition and taking action when I feel like something feels good and right. And I get that signal from my inner knowing and my body. It just feels good and safe, uh, and open.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and like in the sense of relationships and connections, I like the way that you don't limit yourself, where it's like, I have my business over here, I do my, live events here, and then I go work with Selena over here. Like you're willing to, I think there's like a lot of focus around like just like simplifying or doing less, but
Mm,
or even in the entrepreneurial space, there's always this like pressure to like, you know, get out of the corporate world or get out of working for someone else and only work for yourself. But there actually is so much benefit to, because I
mhm,
work a corporate career and I'm running a business, and you know while that takes more time than just, working one job, I think there's so much benefit through that, because I know for myself, like I learn so much from the executives that I, have exposure to and get to work with and, serve in my career, that helps me in my business. And then everything I do in my business, I feel like makes me better in my career. And just,
mhm.
I think the exposure, right? Like the amount of people you probably get to meet through your work with Selena, or the events
Yes.
that you're going to, like all these other things you have your hands in are all playing a part in everything that you're doing. I'm guessing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, exposure is a really good word. And I absolutely don't limit myself. I think that was a
Yeah.
decision, back to the decision making. I made a decision
Yeah.
with myself, I'd say in my mid 20s. I'm 30 now, but in my mid 20s, I was traveling the world for a year, specifically in
Hmm.
Asia. And I had a really big light bulb moment where, when you travel alone and you're on the road for a long time, I mean, you're making relationships left, right, and center. You're saying hello and you're
Yeah.
saying goodbye. many times over and
Yeah.
over again.
Yeah.
And it requires a very open heart. It
Mhm.
requires a very open heart and the commitment to continue being open to relationships, even though you know it's not going to last. But I think that's
Yeah.
also just a metaphor for life in general. Like nothing's permanent, and
Yeah.
that's kind of just an illusion,
Yeah.
anyways. And so it really
Yeah.
requires you to be even more present and intentional when you know that there's no time to waste. So if I know I'm only somewhere for a week or a month, you better be sure I'm intentionally making plans with people and I'm connecting with people. And even though that there's a departure date on me being there, it doesn't take away from the joy and fulfillment I get from being in that place with those people. And then it takes a lot of energy, but it's so soul nourishing. It's like it colors my experiences so much that I wouldn't want it any other way. And I met people, a lot of people who became really tired of, and to be fair, that's totally normal and totally valid. It's like you get kind of fatigued by always like making new friends over and over again or making new connections.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's just an invitation to go inwards for a moment, kind of reset your batteries, reset yourself. But what I
Yeah.
found in through some conversations with some people is they were very stuck in the past with certain connections and the way they unfolded, that they were just romanticizing this experience with potentially a group of people or somebody they met at that location, and they're saying it from a place
Yeah.
of, now you have all these other people in front of you right here, and you're just like,
Yeah.
you're so stuck on comparing to these people. And like, there is infinite room for so much love in our life. Like, I believe love actually is just this infinite resource that we have ability to, but again, these human these little human tricks of our mind are in comparison mode,
Yeah.
and in this kind of thing of like, oh, I've already opened my heart to these people, nobody can compare to this, so I'm just gonna like go on the rest of my travel not really talking or making new friends. And it's to each their own, but I made a decision to myself in that moment. I wasn't going to do that. That didn't sit right with my soul. And it's been a really beautiful decision I think I've made, and has served me really well in just helping me feel like my life is rich. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm honestly a millionaire because I've opened myself up to so much love and so many relationships. And I want that for I want everybody to know what that feels like. And it's just a decision.
That is so beautiful. And it just goes back to like, it's that learning of that scarcity versus abundance mindset that you were talking about in the sense of our relationships, because there is so much more love out there. And there are so many more great people out there to get to know and have conversations with. And, we don't have to travel the world. I mean, if you want to, of course, that's an amazing experience. But like, I'm just saying, you don't have to circle the globe to experience that either, right? Like, you can go to a coffee shop and, you know, compliment the shirt of the
Yeah.
person next to you, right? Like have that conversation. We can have those interactions in our backyard too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I met up with a girl for coffee this morning here in Buenos Aires. She's from here, she's from the city, and I met her a few days ago at the nail salon here. And we just were
Yeah.
entering in the nail salon at the same time. She spoke like some good English. My Spanish is en poco, not very strong. But she was super sweet, and I could just feel like a nice energy from her. And I said, "Do you want to get coffee sometime this week?" And she said, "Yes, I would
Nice.
love that." And I think, like, again, relationships are at our fingertips. They're everywhere, but we can be just blinded in our day-to-day routines that we're not really seeing it. But it's there. And you just have to put yourself out there to it. You have to build that confidence. But the more you take action on
Yes.
it, the more confidence you have with putting yourself out there to ask somebody to get coffee. And a lot of us think, I think I was reading a study on this where a lot of people think it's like weird to like start talking to a stranger, whether they're like at
Yeah.
the cafe or they're on like a subway or a train. But like studies have shown that um we're gonna be a lot happier, and actually the other person more times than not, like I think it was like a really high percentage, actually wants somebody to start talking with them. And that people feel more
Yeah.
fulfilled when they talk to a stranger on transit than they would just like on their phone or on like even
Mm,
reading their book. And it made sense. I mean, we're meant to connect with one another.
yeah. Yeah, I know when I was younger, I was like that kid who would just like talk to anybody, especially adults. Like I would just like, and then I would just like strike up a conversation in the bathroom. I'd be like, "How's your day going? Like, you doing good?" Like, I would just talk to them like a friend, and I remember that feeling so fulfilling. And then of course you get out into the world, and the world gets its hands all over you, and um
Hmm.
i I pulled back, and I put up so many walls for so many years, and pushed a lot of people away, actually, and I miss that. And then, to go back to relationships, my current boyfriend, he will strike up a conversation with anybody about anything and
Hmm.
become best friends with them in 5 minutes, right? And he's also a world traveler, and has been all over the globe. And I remember when we were first together, and me still being in kind of that guarded state, and working on opening up a little bit more. I was like, whoa, like, what are you talking to them? What's going on, right? Like, and my danger signals were going up. And when you said a lot of people want you to start that conversation, I'm now kind of that person, like, where I'll do it sometimes, but there will be a time where I am on a train, or I'm, in the bathroom, or, in a waiting room. And when someone engages with me, it always feels so good, where I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, I can have that connection, and I don't have to like open up and feel like a weirdo. Right? Like, but it's not a weirdo. That's just our own inner judgment.
Yes. It's our own inner judgment. Hmm. Yeah. And so I think that touches on something really important, is to practice non-judgment with yourself, and
Yeah.
to practice like really deep self-acceptance, so that you approach situations with confidence and peace, knowing that
Yeah.
regardless of how this person engages with you, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
and also to not take things so personally. Like, even if somebody kind of
Yes.
reacts a little bit, I mean, I've had this for sure, where people may be a little shocked when I start talking to them, or like the initial shock is like, oh, this girl is like talking to me and like asking me questions, and she cares about me. And and there's sometimes an initial shock, but it's not because they think it's weird. And we've just attached that story. What I've learned
Yeah.
from people is it's new. They're not used to somebody like showing interest always in them that's a stranger, you know? So I think when you build up that self acceptance and a bit of more confidence, and just trust that however the connection or the conversation flows is it's a little bit is out of your control. So the only kind of like energy of control that you can bring to it is just knowing who you are, and
Yeah.
trusting that, you're doing this because this is how you want to live your life, regardless of the outcome.
Right. Like, what I had to learn eventually is like, when I thought, if I do this, if I reach out or say something, I'm worried they'll judge me. What was
Mhm.
actually happening when I flipped it around was I was judging me.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we're judging ourselves. And I think in that moment, when we judge ourselves as we're about to talk to somebody or reach out, we're focusing so much on how they perceive us
Right.
versus like
Right. Versus,
how we perceive ourselves, and like
right.
how we see ourselves as this open, beautiful, connected human being who just wants to connect to another human being.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. That's so beautiful. Like, hold on to that perception versus like how this person is seeing you. Because anyways, you can't control that regardless.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter
Right.
either way. People are going to
Right.
make their assumptions, but you have to make your own decisions about you.
Right. And they could be judging you if you sit there silently.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's so freeing once you own that, and you start to
Yeah.
think less about how people are perceiving you. Um,
Yeah.
and again, there's a bit of like people pleaser energy in there too,
Yeah.
right? It's like if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
thinking so much about how people perceive you, then there's a part of you that wants to be seen a certain way. And so you might even slightly sculpt your dialogue or the conversation or your energy in a way that you're like trying to get them to like you or trying to get them to accept you. And again, that comes back to like accepting yourself, because and people feel that energy. I think one of the biggest breakthroughs I've had is like people feel how you feel about you. I can
Yeah.
immediately, and I approach this more with self-compassion now, but when I'm talking to somebody, I can really feel in the words that they use to talk about themselves and situations, how they see
Yeah.
themselves. I pick up on it
Yeah.
like that. And I just have self-compassion, but I can tell if somebody's really lacking in like deep self-love. And it's yeah, it's again just a reminder that people are more intuitive also than we give them credit for. And if you want to open yourself up to being a millionaire in the connection and relationship department, you have to
Mhm.
work a little bit on your inner relationship to yourself and be
Yeah.
just authentic to you. That's what will draw people in more. And you might
Yeah.
polarize in some situations. You might not be for everybody, but that's okay. Just like
Right.
be authentically you, whatever that looks like and feels like, and you will be magnetic AF. I promise you.
Well, and then the relationships that do stick are going to be so much more real and authentic, which are more
Yes,
fulfilling because
exactly.
you were yourself versus like, oh, I'm gonna show up as this version that like, I'm gonna get on a call with Lydia and I'm gonna be who I think Lydia wants me to be. And then she likes me and we become friends, but then but I'm not being myself. So that's a fake relationship. That's not even real. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, we're like in a movie, like
Yeah.
we're not actors.
No, we're not actors. That could be like part of the title for this episode. Like, don't be an actor. Like, just be
Yeah.
like be yourself. That's what people want so badly. It's what we're craving.
Yeah.
We are craving
Right.
authentic people, I think, more than ever.
Yeah. We need real. Like, I mean,
We need
even
real.
this year for myself, like I've been in the like this like shedding process of
Mm,
just releasing these layers of self-imposed and learned through the media and through the world of perfection and who I'm supposed to be and what I think I'm supposed to say. And like a lot of what I say I believe, but I'll tailor it, right? Like I would tailor it and like for example on work trips where we all get together and we'll do personal and professional shares and everybody would share something personal and professional and they would come to me and I would just share something great professionally and then pass the baton, right? Like I wouldn't open up and I wouldn't like be a human being. And
mhm.
this year I went on a couple work trips and I just started to just it really stemmed of like learning going through some health stuff and learning about chronic illness and things like that. And I'm just like I'm just done trying to
Mhm.
hold up this whatever I'm holding up, right? These flags of like, I have it together, right? Because we
Yeah.
we don't. And I was able to just open up and like share and it was so well received and which speaks to your point of people crave that authenticity, that humanness. And so that word shedding keeps coming back to me lately as like let's just like shed these ideas of what we think we're supposed to do, who we think we're supposed to be, and just be ourselves. And
Mhm.
I haven't done my hair and makeup in like 3 months. Like maybe one day I did for an event. And then other than that,
Mhm.
like I'm just like rocking my curls and letting my face just be like shiny and dewy and you know what I mean? Like and I
Yeah.
feel like it, it doesn't like what are the ways that we can just be ourselves in a way that serves us and others, right? Like and there was something else you were saying too that I thought about something that a mentor said to me once in a very early job that I had many years ago. And it was particularly around sales, but I think this applies to relationships. And
Mm.
he said, like, don't think about what they think about you. Think about how you can serve them. And when you were talking about the connections you were making, like maybe they, didn't react that well, or maybe they, like you were able to like see how they perceive themselves, maybe in not a great way. By you engaging with them and making that connection, you're actually serving them.
Mhm. Yeah, I have actually a good example of this. So again, like I said, I've had people react in many different ways. I ask very deep questions also, like pretty much immediately. I think I just
Yeah.
naturally want to understand people in different ways.
Yeah.
And if the opportunity and time presents itself, just asking them, how are you in a different way?
Yeah.
And I
Love
remember
that.
when I was in Vietnam, I was working for a month in Hoi An, working remotely, but I was also volunteering at a co-working space there. So I was engaging with a lot of different digital nomads and travelers. And
Yeah.
I was kind of like the welcome greeter, like one day a week.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there was one individual, I think he was from Germany, and he kind of would come in. I saw him most of the time every day, but he really kept to himself, like was a bit more, I think, introverted and just like came, did his work, like kind of interacted a little bit.
Yeah.
And I saw him come in one day and I said, "Hi, like, how are you? What are you grateful for today?" That's the question I
Ooh.
asked him.
Yes.
And he was shook. Like he didn't know how to handle himself with that question. He was like, "Whoa, like you and your questions." And he just like was shaking, like he almost like didn't know how to
Oh.
answer it. Yeah, like he
Yeah.
was really caught off guard, and he was kind of
Yeah.
stuttering in his answer, and I was like, "It's okay, like no pressure. Like if you don't have anything, that's okay. Like seriously, I just
Mm.
wanted to ask you how you were in a different way." And he kind of
Yeah.
stumbled. He found like an answer. I think he said, "Oh, it's like a beautiful day and it's sunny."
Oh.
And then I said, "Beautiful." The next day, he sends me a long message on Facebook and says,
Mm.
"Lydia, like, I know I might have reacted a certain shocked way to your question
Yeah.
because I don't get that often, but that
Yeah.
question, I'm gonna even cry thinking about it." He said, "That
Oh.
question stuck with me and changed the rest of my day."
Oh my gosh. That's
And
so
we need to ask
beautiful.
these questions more. And so I think that was like a confirmation for me. Like we have to allow ourselves to reach out and connect with other people because you truly, and you're not going to get that message back from everybody, but again, it doesn't matter. You just
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
who you are and what you bring
Yeah.
to the table is enough, and you never know where you could change the trajectory of somebody's day. And
Mm.
that's like an imprint I'll never forget that moment or that experience.
Yeah. How beautiful is that?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
and
really
like,
beautiful.
how can we start to apply that to our lives? Because that, like, that's, and I'm so on board with you. Like, I start talking to people about like, what are you excited about? What are you afraid of? What do you know what
Yes.
I mean? Like,
Yes.
what's coming up for you, right? Like, I ask those kind of questions to go deeper than like, so what do you do?
Yeah.
Right? Or like, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? Good. Okay, bye. Right? Like you didn't get anything out of that. There's no richness in that. So how
Yeah.
do we like for somebody who hasn't asked those deeper questions or doesn't know how to kind of break through that seal that you've broken through, how do they start to work that way in and or weave that into their networking, whether it's professional or just building genuine connections on the subway or
Mm.
on the sidewalk? Like how do you start to break that into your life?
I think if at first it doesn't feel natural for you or it feels uncomfy, maybe it
Yeah.
helps to think like in your notes app or in your journal, write out like two go-to questions that can be
Yeah.
like just your go-to in social
Yeah.
situations that have dimension to them, right? So these questions
Yeah.
like, what are you grateful for today? What are you most excited about? Like what's been maybe uncomfortable or stretchy for you recently?
Yeah.
And
Ooh,
really
I like
getting
that one.
somebody, yeah, I find like that's always interesting to hear that from people, and it's
Yeah.
vulnerable. Like you might get
Yeah.
some different reactions there,
Yeah.
but but it's worth a try just to create, yeah, more richness and dimension. And so I would jot down
Yeah.
Lindsay and I just gave everybody some great examples. So I would jot down
Yeah.
two go-to questions. And
Yeah.
the next time you're in a social interaction with somebody new, when it
Yeah.
feels right, ask them one of those questions and just start to
Yeah.
naturally get curious and play with that and notice how that changes the texture of that dynamic in that conversation. Um, and just, yeah, I would just start to invite those questions into your conversations. I think that's how you integrate it, and maybe challenge yourself, you can create a goal for yourself too around like the initiation of extending a conversation with somebody. Maybe you start your week and you say, okay, I'm going to make it a goal to start a conversation with one stranger every week in the bus or on the subway. That's kind of a fun goal. Like, just like try
Yeah.
it and see where it takes
Yeah.
you. And maybe you'll find yourself actually doing it more than once
Yeah.
because you're having such a good time. I feel like we don't set goals like that enough. When we talk about goal
Yeah.
setting, a lot of our goals are like, I want to make this much money. I want to get this many clients. Again, those are great goals. I'm all for that. But I don't think we
Yep.
set enough connection goals. Um,
Yeah.
so let's set some connection goals. This is your invitation right now.
I love that. And it's such a great call out. I know like I've moved, states numerous times in the US, and both when I moved to not every state I've done this, but both when I moved to Georgia and the most recent move to Colorado here, I had the goal of like creating meaningful friendships. And what I did was I like put myself out there. I would have those conversations, and I'm like mostly an introvert, maybe an ambivert,
Mm,
where I like a little bit of that, group
yeah.
environment, and then I need to like check out after a few hours because then I'm exhausted. So so I had to kind of wear that extroverted mask, not that it was inauthentic, but just tapping into that part of myself, right? Like tapping
Mhm.
into that part of myself that, to your question that you mentioned, as like stretching, I was stretching myself. And you know going out and like meeting like 85 new people in a new city, and then you might get two or three great long-term friendships out of that. But being able to, kind of what you were talking about a little bit earlier, of like, it's not always going to work out, and that's okay. But the more you put yourself out there and the more you connect, number one, the more natural it becomes and
Yes.
feels, because you talked about building confidence. And then number two, it's kind of a numbers game, right? Like,
Hmm.
most of them may not work out. Maybe one of
Exactly.
them is like you get a great interaction, like the Facebook guy, and he sends a message and that's it. That's where that ends, but it leaves an
Hmm.
impact still. And then another
Hmm.
one just maybe awkward, and maybe you planted a seed for them later, maybe you didn't, we don't know. And then maybe another one becomes a lifelong friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And how beautiful that there's diversity in those different interactions.
Yes.
Like let's have some awkward interactions, like whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I would much rather
It
have that than like not have tried at all.
Right.
It's like what would you rather have? You look back on your life,
Yeah.
would you rather have like look back on your life knowing that you put yourself out there to connect with people, or would you
Wow.
rather look back on it thinking I was too scared, I never knew what to say, I felt weird about it, that's just not who I am. Oh my gosh, we have so many stories. That's why what I hear so
Yeah.
much from people. We use introversion and like being shy as like
Yeah.
that's not who I am.
Yeah.
Like deep down, I think again, how most of us are is we want to feel seen and we want to feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So that also starts with putting yourself out there to create that. I think a lot of people wait for that to come to them. And again, it's beautiful to your point if
Yeah.
somebody welcomes you in, but you
Yeah.
also have to put yourself out there to be open to it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and like going in without expectation.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know what
going
I
in with that
mean?
expectation, taking these stories off. Again, I live in Vancouver, and a lot of people say this very often. So what I find is it creates this like contagiousness of this same limiting belief. And
Yeah.
a lot of people will say it's very clicky here. I hear that
Oh,
all the time, and I just like, and again, in those moments, it's so easy to join in that because you want to feel like
yeah.
belonging rather than like authenticity. And so it's
Mm,
finding actually like a balance of the two. It's like being able to feel belonging, but also being in your authentic self. And I speak my truth. I'm like, I actually don't think it's clicky here. I think it's all about your energy and where the events and circumstances you're putting yourself in proximity to and how you're connecting to people. And if somebody feels like they're cliquey to you, that's not, I think, a reflection of the city being cliquey. That's just that connection that didn't go anywhere. And
Yeah.
that's okay. That's going to happen as our point.
Right.
But if you're holding on
Right.
to this limiting belief of people are so cliquey here, people are so rude, what do you think you're going to attract? Because you're like
Right.
going into every interaction already assuming people. If you're going in with these assumptions, you're not going to create
Yeah.
connection. You should and actually you can have assumptions, but like change the assumption to feel like I assume that
Yeah.
I'm going to connect great with people. Like flip it on its
Yeah.
head into something just more
Yes.
positive and soul nourishing.
Yeah.
I assume that everybody here wants to get to know me because I
Mm,
love who I am. I assume that everybody here has a beautiful heart and story. And maybe if I start conversations with them, I'll learn more about that.
yeah. Well, it's like the red car analogy, right? Like when
I
you
don't know
buy a
this
red
analogy.
car. Oh, okay. Well, it's like if I tell you, or it's like if you buy a red car, all of a sudden you see red cars everywhere, right? Or if I tell you like
Ah,
think about red cars, all of a sudden you see
got
red
it.
cars
Yeah.
everywhere. And I always, kind of use this example of like we will see like every example is out there.
Hmm.
Positive, negative, happy, sad. There's just as much good as bad in the world, but we get to decide what we focus on, and what we focus on is what we're going to see.
Hmm.
So as much as, you know, blue cars are out there, there's also red cars. And you can choose which one you want to look at, right? You can choose
Hmm.
what you want to pick. It's like a buffet. Like
It's
you
a
can walk into the
buffet. Yeah.
buffet and I get like you get to pick what you put on your plate because there's all the options. And that's not to
Yeah. Of
say we can just avoid the struggles and avoid the challenges of life or
course.
those awkward interactions that we talked about. Like that's inevitable. There is no life without duality. To not want duality is to not want
Yeah.
life. And I think we all truly deep down want to
Mm.
be here, right? And
Hmm.
so, but we get to choose what we primarily focus on. And do you want your life to be more balanced between that duality, or do you want it like to
Mm.
just like focus on 90% bad? Like I don't anymore. I don't want I lived that way for a long time and I don't want that anymore.
Preach. Preach it, Lindsay. We don't want that.
And to
Yes.
move into that, I know you talk about and teach visualization, and that's something that you practice a lot. Can you tell us a little bit how that can come into play when we are like building or even
Mhm.
nurturing a relationship that we already have?
Yeah, I'm very much into visualization. So often before I go into social situations, especially new environments for me, I
Yeah.
it's kind of that assuming, but in a picturesque visual way, like in my imagination, I picture
Yeah.
myself and visualize me entering the space, and I try to
Mhm.
picture what the room might look like what the
Yeah.
colors might be in there, what I might see, the people I might encounter, and I just see myself talking to people and smiling and laughing. And I'm not so much into the details of what we're talking about, but I feel the energy of connection. I see myself vibing. I see myself in my, beautiful essence. And I feel this is like a fun technique before you go into a new situation where you're about to talk to somebody. It could be on a date, it could be you're going to like a class or a party, whatever, is like turn on
Mm.
your switch. So first, like
Yeah.
pretend that there's like a switch that is right
Yeah.
beside you in your aura. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm on. I am on and open and approachable, and I'm
Mhm.
ready to meet people. Almost like affirm that, picture it.
Yeah.
And when I'm about to step into a room, I imagine the walls of the room as like a walls of light. And I imagine
Ooh.
myself when I step into that room that the walls of light are like zooming into my heart. Like, so the light is like
Okay.
gathering up and like
Ooh.
draws me into my heart. So then I feel like when I step into the room, I'm magnetic.
Yeah.
And I have this just sense of aura and confidence in the energy that I bring. And so if you want to be the
Yeah.
person where people are saying she lights up a room, he lights up a room,
Mm.
I really recommend bringing in that kind of energy, because then like you step in and you feel it. You feel like people turn to you, people coming up to you, people just like
Yeah.
wanting to be around you. And so yeah, just like try that experiment and see what happens.
I love that. And that's a great way, because people talk about lighting, like that person that lights up the room or the person that brings the whole room down, but not a lot of people explain how to do that. So I
Mm.
love that example.
Mm-hmm. And you have to be ready in those moments. It takes as well building up that confidence and almost like self-concept, because some people
Yep.
might hear that and be like, ooh, that makes me nervous. I don't want all
Yeah.
eyes on me. Like I don't want people. And so, but again, just like going back to what we talked about before, what are your desires? Are your desires to connect with
Yeah.
people, be the person who people want to talk to? Then it's going to
Hmm.
require a bit of like that internal dialogue with yourself to level up your self-concept, and you just feel better. You just feel like good and juicy, and yeah, you're not so like attached to the micro moments of what, again, what people are thinking of you. You're just like in your element.
Well, and I think like when you look at that visualization and when you look at how you enter a room, I don't think we have to do it in a sense of like, "Ooh, look at me, I'm center of
Yeah,
attention." Like, it doesn't have to be this like kind of like arrogance level
exactly.
of being that light. It can be subtle. Like it can be,
You
and maybe not all eyes will be on you, but maybe the right eyes will
the
be on
right
you, right?
eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, energy speaks. So you'll just
Yeah.
attract, like attracts like. So you'll attract the eyes and the energy that is most meant for you in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you also talk about like self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that that's a big part of this too, of like when we're walking into the room and we're, we do our visualization and we walk into the room and we emulate this light and attract the right people into our life. That self-acceptance piece must be a big part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you just, again, you accept yourself in your authentic essence. So you
Yeah.
accept who you are, and everything that comes with that. Like I could be having a bad day before I go into some social situations, or I could be going through something stressful, but I just accept that. I just accept whatever
Mhm.
I'm going through so I can enter into a situation feeling as good as I can. And that doesn't mean I'm bypassing necessarily, but it's like it's this
Yeah.
energy of acknowledging, okay, even though I'm not feeling great today, or even though I've had, a stressful day, even though I'm not feeling like my best self, I love me and I accept me. And it's
Yeah.
and that, connects really well to the free gift I also have for the listeners, which is like EFT tapping has really helped me, repeat those things to soothe my nervous system and soothe my soul before going into new environments and new situations. It's just like accepting whatever you're feeling and acknowledging that you still love yourself anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, and that you don't have to always show up like perfect and full,
Yeah.
like full bar of energy and fully dolled up, and like it's so funny because like to go back to the example of like, I stopped doing my hair and makeup, and not to say I don't take care of my hygiene. Like I absolutely put myself together still,
Of
but
course.
it takes way less time and energy. And it's funny the amount of like compliments I've gotten on like, "Oh, you look so radiant," or like, "Oh, your hair's so beautiful." And I'm like, like the past me would have been like, "Oh, you're disgusting. Like you should have like makeup on and like your hair blown out and like all these things." Like when you can just love yourself for who you are, and like that radiates and people feel that and they're just like, "What are you taking? I want some."
Yeah.
You
What are
know?
you taking? Yeah, absolutely.
Give me that magic pill.
Yeah. The magic pill is you, baby. It's
Yes.
you. It's your energy. Like be just kind of like
Yes.
be a little bit obsessed with you. That's really the magic pill. It's like
Yeah.
not to the level, of course, of like we're almost scared of like we sound obnoxious. So then we like go
Yeah.
like veering in the other direction. But you have to
Yeah.
be a little
Oh yeah.
obsessed with you. You have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Truly. And and it takes vulnerability, right?
Yeah, it
Because like
does.
it goes back to like what we were talking about before of like being yourself takes that vulnerability. Like me showing up at a work trip and being like, yeah, I'm balancing how do I still do an amazing job and be a high achiever and high performer while balancing chronic illness and chronic pain? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's that's super scary, but the
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability I showed up with allowed me to build deeper, more authentic connections in the workplace. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we build that vulnerability in for ourselves to our lives and
Mm-hmm.
connections?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You build it by loving you for every part of you.
Yeah.
Make it a daily practice.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of people too are like scared to take that time for themselves, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, if I, take time for this, then, I miss out on this thing over here, or I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to serve this person over here or do everything they ask of me. And then I won't be accepted by them versus being like, wait, how do I accept me?
Hmm. Mm. Yeah, as soon as you're like wondering about being accepted by others, you're like, wait a second. How am I accepting myself right now? Yeah, just bring it back to you.
Yeah.
And then you'll naturally
Yeah.
accept others. Because when you accept
Yeah.
yourself, you see others as a reflection of you. And you just accept others as who they are.
Yes. So good. Well, I am so grateful for your time here, and you have shared so much with us. And I want to ask you one final question, and that is, what is the one thing that we should all go do after this episode to start building those stronger connections and deeper relationships to have that richness in our lives, whether it's personally or professionally?
Hmm. One thing that you should go do right now is start with what's there for you. Reach out
Mm,
to somebody you appreciate, but you love,
yeah.
and
Ooh, I like
just
that. Yeah.
say why you appreciate them. Just say, hi, so and
Yeah.
so. I was just thinking about you. I just wanted to say I appreciate this about you so much, and I really value having you in my life. Start there.
I love that because it's starting where you are and you don't even have to start with
Yeah,
a stranger. Like start with who you know
exactly.
already. Like get that practice
Start
in. I
with who
love
you
that.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then you kind of touched on it already, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk about that EFT tapping guide. I personally I've kind of in and out known about tapping. I've tried it here and there over the years. I'm getting a little bit more into it with some of the programs that I'm in right now for my health, but um
Mhm.
I personally want to get my hands on this guide. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for the listeners to get their hands on it. EFT is a modality that encompasses both acupressure and modern psychology, and it's the practice of tapping with your own fingertips on certain meridian points in the body to help release stuck feelings or emotions. And so
Yeah.
I have a free 5-minute EFT tapping guide for letting go and healing a broken heart. And this is a video of me walking you through my exact script that will help you to release those stuck emotions if you're holding on to some heartbreak, whether it's heartbreak over a romantic connection, a friend, or just like even lingering heartbreak that you quite haven't been able to move. This guide, this video will help you do that. And what I love about it is it's very quick, immediate, and easy. And you don't need
Yeah.
to leave your room. You can just do it at home with yourself. And it's very accessible. And I'm just excited for people to use it. So I will, have the link to download that. And yeah, I'm excited for you to use it to recharge your energy and rewire those neural pathways in the moment.
What a beautiful gift. And we will have all of that link below for you guys to go ahead and access and jump right into it. And Lydia, I just, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for showing up, even from across the world, and sharing with us your experience and your wisdom and how we can start to cultivate those connections more deeply, because it truly is so important. And we are creatures of community, and that is how we thrive. We go further together, and you're truly paving that path for us to do that together. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Lindsay, for inviting me on your podcast and platform and giving me this beautiful space. I knew when I connected with you through, of course, my work with Selena, that there was just a really nice energy and rapport here, and it's exciting to see you shine through like your interviewing skills here. So yeah, such an honor, and yeah, hope to connect again.
Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world, and as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.